broadcast for shooters, hunters, and gun enthusiasts. This is the Firearms Radio Network. The bandwidth for this episode of Gun Guy Radio is sponsored by Patriot Patch Company. PatriotPatch.co.
Welcome to episode 276 of Gun Guy Radio. I'm your host, Jake, with co-host Zach. We talk about guns, prepping, homesteading, tools, automotive, and so much more. This episode is brought to you by the Patriot Patch Company. Hey, Zach, what's up?
How's it going? It's a lot more homesteading and automotive these days.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Well, we talk about what we've been up to. Kind of only way we keep this show going.
I mean, I am getting ready to go to Colorado again in 2 weeks for another training class, so that'll be fun, but that's just a weekend class, so
yeah.
We'll talk about that next show probably then.
Well, and I have got notes from listeners that they do enjoy, the more variety of things that we talk about, and, there's so many gun shows out there that just talk about the latest on, name that topic in the firearm world, but, and a lot of those people are probably better well-read than we are currently anyways on that.
Exactly.
So you've been prepping your house for power outages.
Yeah, the kind of non-existent power outages that we have. I'm in a fairly newer subdivision. We have underground power in the subdivision, so when we do lose power, it's usually caused by something outside of our area that hit some line somewhere. But we had I was on a kick a while back, and we bought. I think it was in 2021, like April 2021, that spring, summertime when we were doing some house renovations and stuff. And I had a little money in my pocket, and we bought a Costco tri-fuel generator. And then we kind of just sat on it for that whole time. It did the initial setup on it, and it never ran on gas. I just put it on propane and turned it on, made sure it ran, but really didn't do much other than that. And then, so that was 21. And then, here we are in 2023, and it had been sitting in my garage this whole time. Kind of been tripping over it the whole dang time. And I was like, man, if we do have a power outage, I'm kind of screwed here because I can't really hook up anything unless I run extension cords into the house to hook up the refrigerators and freezers. But my HVAC system, it's all hardwired directly into the panel. So you'd have to do some jankiness to get it. I mean, I could, but it would be pretty janky to try to get it all hooked up to do anything beyond just stuff that just plugs into a regular outlet. So it kind of is in the back of my mind gnawing at me. And then in, this summer, I think we talked about it briefly, but I also realized after reading the manual that you're supposed to run the generator for 5 hours to break it in. So I was like, oh crap. So, when I was on vacation, my parents came out here. So while I had a little bit of time, I pulled the generator out and hooked up a gas tank to it, or a propane tank to it. And I ran it for 5 hours straight, and I did a, oil change afterwards. That's the whole thing. You're supposed to break it in and change oil, then you're supposed to be good for then. So yeah. I did that, and I quickly realized that, the barbecue style gas tanks, what are those, 20 pounders?
20,
yeah. So those tanks, I was only at a no load. I didn't have a load on the generator at that time. And just running it for 5 hours, I went through 3/4 of one of those tanks. And I only bought 4 tanks thinking, in a situation, I can just swap tanks out. And,
yeah.
And then I'm reading the manual and it says it's this much load, this much load uses this much gas. And then, exponentially as load goes up, it sucks down a lot more gas as you go.
Yeah.
I didn't really quite put 2 and 2 together in my head before I made this purchase. So this quick, Costco deal, this, economically priced generator that, Costco sells, quickly turned into a rabbit hole project for me. And, I went a little bit off on the deep end here. So I took that to really realize that propane is not really the answer for me in my situation, because we don't have a huge propane tank like a country house. If I did, if you had it your house, you have a big propane tank at your house. So in theory, you could tap into that. You're no big deal. If I had 100-pound tanks, I could probably do it. But they're kind of right at that border point of being too heavy to manhandle around, and they're not big enough that a gas company will come out and fill it at your house realistically. So you have to take it somewhere to get filled. And I was kind of thinking in a real actual longer term situation, more natural disaster than anything is am I going to be able to get fuel or am I going to be competing with every Tom, Dick, and Harry that needs to get fuel at the same time too. So, because a lot of campers around here, a lot of people live in trailers and stuff. They're using propane tanks like that as well. So that kind of got me thinking I kind of need natural gas. You lose a little bit of output. I think it's like 10% output using natural gas because it just doesn't have as much BTUs.
Well, I think it depends on the efficiency of the generator, but I think, at least 10%, somewhere more, I think.
Yeah, so this generator specifically, it's on the running watts, which is, your not just your peak watts, but your running watts. On gas, it makes 7,500 watts. On propane, it's 6,750. And then when you go down to natural gas, it's 5,500. So it's a pretty significant drop there. But in theory, it's kind of like a, convenience factor, endless supply, quote unquote, whatever. But that kind of had its own issues. Like the house was pre-plumbed for barbecue gas line in the back of the back porch and everything. And I'm like, oh, great, this is good. Well, it's like one roadblock after another. You don't even think of a project that's going to be simple. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, that barbecue line is only, I think it was 3/8, or I don't even think it was 3/8 or half-inch line. But half-inch line, you can't go very far because there's charts out there that say like for this size pipe, it can only carry so much volume at so many feet. And reading over the manual, they suck down quite a bit of fuel to keep it running, especially at load. So I kind of went, oh crap. So we ended up having to tap new 3/4 inch gas line into the meter right where the gas meter is and run new gas line along the garage and put a QD disconnect right there with a shutoff valve on the back of the garage, which actually kind of worked out pretty good because there's gas hoses on Amazon that you can do, and there's like 3/4, half-inch and everything. So I did a 3/4 inch hose that you can do 36 foot, which is like the kind of the magic number there. Any going much longer, they get really, really expensive. That's like the longest hose you can get for like a reasonable-ish price. And there's links to all the stuff in the show notes if you want to see like the ones. I can't remember exactly how much that hose was. I think it was $150 basically for a 36 foot hose. So by running 3/4 inch gas pipe, hard pipe along the garage, that also extended me. So I could even go further by putting a half-inch line on the end of that 36 inch hose or 36 foot hose if we wanted to. So that's kind of the cool thing about gas is you can neck it down as you go and kind of get the benefits of the bigger pipe beforehand. So it doesn't work like liquids. It's really kind of strange how that works. So you got to kind of have to switch your brain a little bit on how the gas works versus liquid or, any other units of measurement there. So, so that was a little bit expensive. I didn't think gas pipe was that freaking expensive, but just go to your Home Depot and look at all the little dang fittings and the T's and the elbows and all the little crap you need. It's expensive. So what I ended up doing was we mapped out everything on a sketch of like all the little pieces and bits and bobs that I thought we would need. And then basically ordered all the fittings that we could do off of supplyhouse.com. Much, much cheaper than Home Depot. And, because I didn't need it right then and there. So we ordered all that. They don't carry 10-foot sticks of pipe, obviously, because you can't really ship that easily. But everything else, all the little ball valves and everything to shut the gas off, because we put one at the meter, one at the end of the garage. So you had dual shutoffs just in case. All that stuff ordered online, and then got the actual 10-foot sticks of pipe at Home Depot just because it was, it's the easiest place to get it. So we ran gas piping, got that all going, and then the electrical, that was a whole thing too, because we're in Washington State, which is kind of nausea-ish a little bit. So I was a little concerned about would they even allow an interlock kit, because I didn't want to do a huge like manual transfer switch or an automatic transfer switch. If you're doing like a full whole home generator that's like permanent, you just do the automatic transfer switch, so it just does it all for you. It's part of that whole thing. That's one thing. A manual transfer switch, or like people do sub panels where you have another panel broken out, and then you say, okay, on the generator, these circuits are going to be on the generator, then you flip that switch and then it gets fed from the generator and you cut off your utility power. That's how my in-laws one is done. And they actually say that's kind of a pain in the butt to realistically use, because it's kind of, they didn't set it up. It was the previous owner, and it was kind of like no rhyme or reason on what was in the sub panel versus what wasn't. Oh, yeah. And you don't get a lot of control of, it's not easily swappable once you've got something in a sub panel versus in your main panel.
Right.
And so you don't get a lot of flexibility. So what I did was we went with an interlock kit. And what this is it's basically you put an incoming circuit breaker that resides near your main utility shutoff breaker. And then there's a metal bracketry that literally rivets to your cover panel of the panel, cover plate of the panel. So that way, it moves and locks. So you can't have both the generator's power and the utility power on at the same time. It literally shifts and drops, and it will block the utility main breaker from being engaged if the other breaker is engaged. And so this is allowed from the state. I was kind of surprised because when you Google it, I was trying to Google it before I even went down this path. But there's these like kind of scare articles out there, like, you can't backfeed a panel, because that's what it technically is called. It's called backfeeding, because you're feeding the generator power through that circuit breaker back into your panel, which will then feed all the other circuits like the normal house, but you're not coming in the same path as the utility power. And so they call it backfeeding. And yes, backfeeding while you still have the connection to the main power is dangerous, because if a lineman's working outside in a power outage, that electricity could flow all the way outside, get kicked up on the transformer, and kill somebody. So that is dangerous. But there's a difference there with the interlock, because the interlock makes you shut off that other breaker, so there should be no connection to the outside world once you break that connection. But it's very hard to research, at least it was for me, to see what was legitimately able to be done. And I figured on that one we need to have electrician do that. So I had it all prepped, and I really had it all mapped out. Like, I'm an over planner on this stuff. So like, I called all these electricians, I had them pictures, I had all the lengths and everything. And the guy, multiple guys were like, oh yeah, this is a slam dunk, easy peasy, and they send me quotes that are just astronomical. And I'm like, well, at that price, I'll just do it. Cause as a homeowner, you can just apply for a building permit or a work permit and then have the inspector come in. But I was so fearful of screwing up like one little thing and then having to redo it with the inspector afterwards. And I was like, you know what? Because we were going to fish lines and everything, because I wanted to have the electrical inlet kind of back in the back of the garage, and which was about 30 feet away from the panel, because that way I didn't have to cross my vinyl fence with the cord, because the panel is on the front side of the fence, where I really wanted everything to go over on the back side of the fence, and it was so tight to the house and everything, you couldn't just butt it through the outside of the siding. So it was going to require fishing up into the attic and everything. And I'm too big to get up in the attic and fish around in there and everything. So I'm like, all right, we'll bring in the pros here. So finally found a guy that was competent and was reasonable. So I got him in there and I showed him everything, and he's like, what do you do for a living? And I was like, why? He goes, people don't plan stuff like this out. He's like, I've never met a customer that had this planned out like to this level of intricacy. Because I had the way the generator works, this was all kind of new to me at the time, is a 220 plug, which is what the generator puts out on a 50 amp plug, which is, 220, which is really two legs of 110 voltage. And so you have the common ground between them, and then you have the two hot legs coming in. And so that's how your panel works too. There's two sides of your panel that there's 110 on each side. And then when you have like a 220 item, it takes power from both legs of that. Mm-hmm. And so, but they say like your generator, yeah, it's a 50 amp plug, quote unquote, but really if you were drawing more unbalanced power on one leg of that 110 in the panel, it could overload the one side if the other side isn't taking up a lot of power, and it could, you could blow a circuit, because it's really not even 50 amps. It's only like 32 amps technically on the generator. So all these little intricacies that I didn't want to be surprised by later. So I got like an amp clamp meter, and I was, for weeks beforehand, I was like measuring loads on every circuit, on every leg of the panel to see like, okay, when the AC kicks on, how much does it go up? What is the draw on this? What does everything pull in the house? house. And then we got into this rabbit hole of, well, the panel says it's, bedrooms A and B or whatever. And like, but what actually shuts on and off? Well, we went and mapped the whole dang house of what actually goes to each circuit breaker. It's shocking.
Yeah.
They do not label, like they do the bare effort when they build a house. So like there was the man door outside the garage back door. There's a light on the outside of the wall. That's hooked up to the master bathroom circuitry because it's like kitty corner, on the house, as the crow flies. But it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like if that went out for some reason, if I hadn't mapped that out, I'd be pulling my hair out saying like, why is it not on the garage light circuit? Because I have a garage light circuit. Why is this one not on it? Like all these things that you'd never have to think about until you do need to think about it. So we went through all this. I had it like laminated, and then I wanted to move some circuits around so it balanced the loads out, and we did that. So I mean, I got it where it was pretty darn even, assuming everything's on.
I just imagine this electrician walks in and it's like, Zach's in there. It's like The Beautiful Mind or Always Sunny in Philadelphia scene where he's got all the string on the wall and bullet points and pictures and like, here's what I'm thinking.
I don't doubt it, because I came in a little hot too as soon as he came in, because he didn't want to come in and like look at it. He did it all by pictures, and like he ordered the whatever 6-4 cable, so it's pretty expensive cable that we had to run. And I was like, are you sure you don't want to come measure this yourself before you buy the cable and cut it? Because it's like, what if my measurements are wrong? He goes, you'll be fine. And I'm like, all right, because it's like, it's not cheap cable, and whatever. And so he came in and he was working on it, and like the attic was a disaster because there's like these gables on the side of the garage that they stick off the side of the garage wall by like whatever 3 feet or whatever. Mm-hmm. But all the wiring goes down like past where you can get your body in, and then it drops down the wall panel. Oh. So you could like fish a wire, but you can't get your hand down there to drill a new wall cavity to get like another popped hole if you're doing it from the top.
Yeah.
Thankfully, when I did my garage, I didn't have drywall put in ahead of time because I was poor. I did the OSB later, and just so happens that where we needed to fish, I had like a 2 foot by 3 foot piece of OSB right there that we could just unscrew from the wall, fish up into it, drill up, and then he could fish it back down through the hole that we just created from the bottom. So that did work out, thank God. But I'm glad he was up there, not me. But that did work out. We got it all fished. It looks beautiful. It all passed inspection. Was great. Interlock kit works great. And then I did these little like power meters. So there's these little dual boxes that are hooked up to the incoming legs of the generator. And so what they do is when the generator is running, it actually can sense the load on each leg of that 110, and it tells you the voltage on each leg too.
Oh, that's cool.
And so when it's running, and it only flips on when that generator's breaker gets flipped, so it's not running all the time. And it'll tell you then, like, are you balanced or are you getting close to being overloaded? Because, the generator itself only just tells you how much output voltage it's putting out. It doesn't tell you how many amps or anything like that. It tells you hertz and voltage. That's pretty much it. So you're kind of a guessing game if you're like, how do you know you're overloading your generator other than it just cutting out when it hits max?
Yeah, no one does really. I mean,
no. So I bought those. That worked out really good. And then I was thinking, well, how do you know, other than seeing like your neighbor's house is turned back on, how do you know the utility power comes back on? So, and then to go shut your generator off. So there's a utility alarm I bought by Reliance Controls and I mounted it right next to those power meters that you literally wrap your incoming mains on around so it can sense the current. And when you go to turn the generator on, you just flip a switch on this box. And then when it senses power coming through those mains, it just screams off like a fire alarm, almost like a screeching siren. And that way you can hear it over the generator running for one, because you're going to have a hum going on.
Right.
And then you just know, hey, power's back on, do it, go kill it, and flip everything back over. So far it's working. But that really got me down this rabbit hole of, well, how much power is being used in the house? Like, you take it for granted a lot, but there's a thing that is, it's called the Emporia Smart Monitor. And it's kind of the same concept of what I was saying. I was amp clamping all the individual circuits, but when I was amp clamping it, it only tells you like a snapshot of that very second of how many watts the house is drawing. But what the Emporia does is it basically gives you 16 amp clamps plus the mains. So you put these little amp clamps on every circuit that you want, 16 of them, which covered pretty much everything I ever needed. And then you have them on the mains. So it knows by the mains how much total power your house is taking in at any given time by the second. And then as you do your 16 loads that you want to track individually, it knows what those are. And then it subtracts that from the overall, then it just gives you like a balance account. So anything you're not tracking individually, it just sums up in a, whatever else account, basically. But I can look at by the second, by the minute, hour, day, week, month, or year on my overall usage, all those 16 circuits of what it uses and the watts. There's a bunch of different units of measurement. You put your utility rates in there and your like when your bill resets. Yeah. So like I know how much my hot tub cost me. That's if I would have known, I don't think I would have bought a damn hot tub. Like honestly, it costs us, it's about, I know it was roughly $1 a day. It actually doesn't cost me right now in the summer because it's not heating up like it would be in the winter. I'm really curious when it gets to the winter time, how much it truly costs. But right now it's like 75 cents a day when nobody's even using it just to maintain temp and just cycling the water. That's not nothing. I mean, it is not a lot. I get it. But like you add up a bunch of those and it's like, is it really worth it? I don't know, man. But then like I had these, we have a fountain in the front, area there that has like a basalt column and it has a pump that, does like a babbling brook thing or whatever. Well, I don't know if we talked before, but I put a smaller pump in it this year. So that takes a lot less electricity, but it still takes like, I think it was like 3 cents an hour. I know I sound super cheap when I'm talking like this, but it was like, why am I running this when we go to bed? Like nobody's oohing and awing over this fountain in the middle of the night. So like I already bought a smart switch on Prime Day for, Christmas lights. That's an outdoor rated smart switch. Yeah. So all I did is I put it in the plug that the pump turns on. I shut it off at 9 p.m. and I turn it back on at, like 7 a.m. Who cares? It still runs enough time to not get stagnant. I'm actually even considering like shutting it off like half-hour increments during the day just to, why does it need to be running 24/7 in those other periods? But we're going to pull it out in the next 2 months anyways. And we usually pull it out in November just because it's going to freeze. So maybe I don't need to worry about it that much. But just stuff like that. And if you had like an electric oven, this app, you could put reminders in there to say like, if you see usage at these times of days or for longer than this amount of time, alert me through the app.
Oh, that's
you could
cool.
do it for that.
That's really, like that's probably the best use of this.
Yeah. And like, when I was reading reviews of it before I bought it, they were saying like people didn't realize how much their Xbox took power on and I actually went and changed it because I had it on the standby mode forever. I haven't played my Xbox in months. Well, why do I have to have it on that quick start mode where it's just always kind of ready to start? I actually just I changed it to be like shut all the way off. I don't need you to be on. I don't need you to be turned on in 2 seconds. I can wait, So because those things draw power quite a bit. So in theory, it's cool. It's only $160, whatever. So if you're doing it for cost savings, it'd take you a while to make up the money that you spent on the actual thing, but it's really easy to install. I thought it's very interesting, the data.
Yeah. And, it could save you that much real quick too if you got something really out of whack. Like if you have like a freezer that is not like running at 100% efficiency that's going out and you don't know it and it's just using gobs of power.
If you got a leak in your well pump, that's what's big for like people like brewer, like if you had a leak in your well pump or something that was making it cycle more often than you don't know.
Right.
Stuff like that. Yeah. It's got a lot of uses and it's very easy to install. I was pretty happy with it. So, I'm liking it so far. But yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, the generator, so I don't think I'll use it very often, but I'm glad I have it now. It's a peace of mind thing at this point.
So a couple of thoughts here. Generator storage. So, a lot of people are just like you. They're at Costco. They see a generator. It's a good deal. And you've been thinking, I need to get this. I need to be prepared. And, I bet like 90% of people that buy generators, it's just buried in the garage or they don't even know where it's at. Fast forward a few months or a few years later and it's never ran or it hasn't ran since they bought it. And I know mine is just completely buried right now, partly due to construction, but if it stays like that through this winter, like that garage was inaccessible this winter because ice and piles of snow iced in the door where I couldn't open the door. Like there was no way I could open it. I even had sledgehammers and pickaxes, and I couldn't get that door open this last winter. So like you really could be really messed over in a situation in the winter months like that or something. So that's something to really think about, is like, just where is your generator at? Can you always get to it 100% of the time?
Yeah. And then the other thing, and that's what I did is, and we have a shed behind our garage, which is like 3 feet away from our garage on a concrete foundation. It's like a little miniature house basically. And it's stored there. The hoses and electrical cable, I'm planning on just leaving hooked up permanently to the generator, and then having the hoses at the door to the shed where you can just open the door and then plug them directly into the garage, which is only, 6 feet away. So it's not like a huge lift to do it. And then there's a roll up door on the end of the shed where you can just open it up to let it, the exhaust pull out from the generator.
Yeah.
And then if you really want to feel safe, you can actually roll it out into the backyard from there too, if you don't want to run it inside the shed. But what we're more worried about is, I know how to do all this, but does your spouse know how to do it?
Yeah.
So like, and then especially because it's never going to happen in like ideal conditions. It's going to happen at a stressful time, and it inevitably will happen when I'm not there for some reason. This happened before. It happens seemingly every time. It's somehow this stuff happens when I'm not there. So our plan is to do a SOP sheet and laminate it and chain it to the generator itself, and then have her do a couple dry runs with it. But because it also matters, like the order of operations. Like you want it,
right.
With this interlock kit, I guess we never did explain how to do that. Is like you got to shut off all your breakers, shut the main power off, let the brake bracket drop down so you can turn the generator back on. But like in the heat of the moment, will you remember all that? And then how do you know which breakers to turn back on? And so like there's stickers you can put on the panel or the breakers themselves to say like, these are the ones that we think are the generator specific loads. To start with those, and not to turn them all on at the same time, and flick them on sequentially.
That's a really good point, because you and I could probably, even if it's years later, stumble our way through that, because we're fairly technical and, just how we're wired. But like, even, I know with Jenny, even if I walk her through it, fast forward a couple of years, she would have no idea. She wouldn't even attempt it at that point.
Well, then put the stress of needing it to be go time. Like you actually did lose power and now you need it. Like there's a stress involved there. Yeah.
So having, how-to guides right there chained to it, I think is the only way that it would work for, another person.
Well, and I mean, even me, I did that 5-hour run, and I mean, it's a pretty simple generator to start. There's a dial that you turn to the fuel source, and then it lights up a light that gives you 4 minutes to start there. And in theory, all you do is hit the rocker switch for the starter, and it starts cranking over. And I never really had to choke it even, but you could choke it. There's a choke on the side, but it pretty much starts instantly there. But as soon as we got the gas pipe hooked up and I hooked the hose up to it and everything, we did all the same operations, light lit up and everything. Go to hit the starter, nothing. Like zero, nothing. Like nothing happened. And I'm like, okay, I must be stupid here. There's got to be something else I'm missing. I had to go get a multimeter, check the battery. Like maybe the battery's dead. No, it was fine. And like, I'm like, okay, what are we doing wrong here? And there's even like pre-printed instructions on the gas tank. Like, oh, here's your steps and like little pictorials and stuff. Nothing's happening. And I'm like, what the hell? And so like we ended up pull starting it, and that's the only downside of having the gas hose is 36 feet of hose takes a while to fill up and like get to the generator and like get it started. So it was a little cold blooded, to go right from there, but, got it pull started, and then I was playing with it and, shut it off. And then like hitting the panel, suddenly the button worked, and it was like weird, but it was sitting out in the sun for like a while, like direct sun, super hot.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, did something happen here? Cause immediately after that, I put it back in the shed, and I tested it like 4 or 5 times throughout the next couple days. Instantly fired as soon as I hit the button next time.
It's like leaving your phone in the sun too long.
Yeah. I don't know if it was like a plastic contact got overheated and like was just trippy or something there, but I was about to call the company and get a new switch for it. But then it was like, I brought it into the shed where it wasn't have beating sun on it, and it worked just fine. So I laid off that, but it's like, even if you think you know how to start it, there's no guarantees. It could have just thrown me a curveball like that. And I don't know, would they know to pull start it in that event? Who knows?
Well, right. And that kind of makes me leery of a lot of these fancier generators with all the digicals.
The digicals? Well, they have ones now that are like the key fob start, they can start them remotely and everything. It's like, yeah, that's something.
Yeah. And then, you mentioned fuel storage or fuel efficiency and stuff, and how quickly generators burn through fuel. And so many people think they're so prepared, but like, have you ran a generator on your house for a week straight? I mean, cause you're not gonna, I guarantee it. I was even at a friend's house. They're like super, like kind of prepper, they think they're prepper minded and stuff. And I think they had like 3 generators in this garage, but like, there's not enough fuel on the property to run them more than, a few days probably. So like, why even have these generators? Like, I don't know. I think it's, you see it at Costco, you buy it, you put it away, it's checking off a box in your mind. It's peace of mind. You think you're prepared then, but you're not, because you haven't actually done anything other than buy this item.
It's almost worse because it makes you feel prepared when you're really not. So it's almost like a false sense of security. Where I was there for a while, I guess.
Yeah, and then you're just thrown into, if it's a really bad scenario where you got to get gas for it, then you're in, block long lines to get gas with everyone else, and like, you're really not any better off than not having one to even begin with, probably.
When I really didn't want a gasoline one, or run it on gasoline, because they say like, storing them, it's just the carbs get all gummed up with all that. And so it's like, I did not want that hassle. Thankfully, the gas, whether propane or natural gas, runs a lot cleaner and the carbs stay super clean. Yeah. So you have a higher chance of it running. But like that starter battery, I really should put a battery tender on that.
Right.
Long term, I should have a better tender. I need to do that as well. But just all those little things like that you don't think of. But the other thing that, those people had those 3 generators and everything. But let's say you run it for a day. Do they have enough oil to do all the oil changes on them? Because you can't run them long without doing an oil change. I think it's 24 hours. I want to say you're supposed to do an oil change every 24 hours.
Yeah.
So at least on these portables, like a whole home one is a little different, but like they don't hold that much oil. And so you got to have that oil on hand and be able to shut it down and change oil and refresh it.
Yeah, I mentioned this before on the show, I think, but you dive into the deep end with the whole home units, the Generac ones, and like, it's nothing but bad reviews on those things. Like, they're just beyond terrible. Though, at least last time I researched them, like, just awfulness. Like, so that's a whole nother can of worms there.
Yeah, I looked at them because Costco sells one of those as well for like $5,500, $6,000, something like that. And it would be great, except for that fuel consumption is ungodly. Mm-hmm. I'd have to get a whole new meter put on the house. Jeez. It wouldn't. My meter is not even big enough. At 250,000 BTUs, wouldn't even support the generator alone, let alone the household loads on it on top of it. So you'd have to do all that. It'd be a whole can of worms to even just get that installed. So
well, it's funny you mentioned the battery and battery tender, because this last winter was like the first winter that I really got prepared and had battery tenders on like over a dozen batteries. I, pulled them out of the vehicles and everything, and out of lawnmowers and golf carts and everything. And I never even thought of the little battery in the generator.
Oh, yeah. Well, thankfully, you probably could have jump-started it if you needed to, if you had all those other batteries. But it's a pain. Like, it's the stress of the time, and you don't want to be pulling around, where's my dang tools to get the little battery out of there, or where's my jumper cables? Oh, you want that stuff ready to go if you can. It's going to be a stressful time. If you need a generator, you've already lost the battle. And so you want it to make it as smooth and easy as possible when you need it to get it up and running. Because everybody's going to be like at 11 stress level of everybody. So everybody's going to be nipping at each other's throats already because it's a stressful time of when everything shuts off. So I'm trying to make it as clean as possible. So I think we've gone long enough on generators, but suffice to say, I probably didn't need it, but it's done now, and I've got it now at this point.
So yeah, let's talk about your truck real quick. So you got the Tundra 2005, is that right?
2005 Tundra, yep.
So has it been in the dream that you thought it would be? It's
okay. I think my biggest fault is wanting it to be like a new truck. So like just putting, I think it's a bit of a money pit in a way, just because, like, I thought I had a caliper that was sticky. It's got 4 piston rotors on it on the front, and it didn't have very good brakes to begin with. I knew it needed a brake job when I bought it. Yeah. And then it was making that grinding noise we talked about, I think. And, so I was like, when I took the brakes off, it had a pit, one of the pistons wouldn't go back in smoothly out of the 4 on the one. So I was like, it needs calipers. And it's like, well, the trucks are a little bit under braked, to begin with from the factory. So I was like, well, at that point, you might as well do this slotted in cross drilled rotors. And it's called the zero stop kit. I guess people that had these Tundras, it's like the kit to do for just OEM replacements. So did that kit, but then it's like you need new rotors and then, new rotors, pads, and then the calipers, because I had a sticky caliper. Well, so I did all that, and it's like, well, there's $500 down the drain. And then I go for a test drive, and it's like, it's still not, the noise is not there. So it's like, well, that means the noise was probably the CV shafts. And so it's like, because the CV shafts are started throwing grease. So it's like, at what point do you stop and just say, okay, it's a 20-year-old truck, and I'm just going to deal with it because I don't drive this every day as my lifeblood, versus, okay, if I can fix it, I should fix it, Just, I did the spark plugs, and when I pulled the spark plugs off, it's got coil packs, like a coil on plug, so it's got the big tube you pull out. And when I pulled the coil pack off, most of them had it's got like a rubber tip on it that was super hard and brittle, the rubber. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, well, do you have to buy a whole new coil pack for that? And then it has like a rubber sealing washer where it hits the valve cover so it doesn't get it down in that channel. And thankfully there's a big community around there, and there's a forum, and they're like, Denso makes a reboot kit. So I bought that, and then I went to go put those in there, and I realized, oh crap, the plastic shafts of these coils, almost every one of them had cracks along the way. So I was like, am I losing spark on these cracks? Like, do I need new coils now too? And so I just black taped them just to prevent.
I was going to say, just duct tape them.
Yeah, I just black taped them, shoved them back in there. Then I went on the forums, and they're like, as long as your car's not misfiring, you're probably fine. Yeah. You are fine, really, pretty much. But and my truck doesn't throw any codes, it's not misfiring, so I'm like, all right, I'm good. But those are $50 pop, and it's like all these little nickel and dime things, and is it worth it? I don't know. But the freaking door checks. Door check, the little arm that holds the door open. The back 2 doors on these double cabs, and apparently it's a Toyota Tundra thing, but they had like no resistance. So you go to like load anything in. So I went to Costco with the truck once, and I had my cart full of crap, and I'm like, open the door, go to grab the thing, turn around, boom, it shuts right on your face. And you're like, God damn it. So you're like, you're just fighting this thing. And it wasn't even like parked on an incline or anything. It's just like, it just like instantly shuts on you. So it's like, all right, well, there's no like aftermarket one for those. So you have to buy the OEM ones at the little sketchy guy that I buy the stuff on Facebook from, which has pulled through multiple times now, thankfully. But a set of those door checks for both rear doors is like $160
Jeez.
for those things. But I put them in, and I'll be damned, the doors stay open. So it's like, you can make an argument like, yeah, you don't need those, but it's like, I would be so annoyed every time I went to try to put something in the back of the truck that like it's worth it to me for that. But I could see the argument that it's not worth it for everybody. Mm-hmm. But just stuff like that. And, I put a new, power steering line in it because it was leaking. Thankfully that did fix the leak. Wasn't a big deal. Stuff like that. So I don't want a car that leaks. That stuff drives me bonkers when you just leave a puddle on concrete, because concrete stains don't come out easily. Like, it just drives me nuts. So thankfully that fixed that one. But yeah, it's just,
I'll be sure to park on the street if I come visit you.
Yeah. Yes, please do. But even with all these new upgrades I put new rubber hoses, and then like, there's a little hard line that's like, that goes from the hard line to like the spindle, or from the caliper to the spindle, that they say like people break those all the time trying to take the calipers off. And so I was like, man, I don't want to get into this job and then find out I break this line, and then I'm stuck waiting, either paying exorbitantly at the local dealer to get the part, or waiting for mail to send me the part from the sketchy Facebook guy. So I pre-ordered those lines. They're only like $11 or $12 a piece. And then I bought new rubber lines to go from there to the frame rail. So I put new lines in it too, because it's just like, even after all that, the brakes are still not that great. So it's like, okay, I need to bleed them a few more times, because I did the fronts and I didn't go back and redo the rears and then do the fronts again. So I got to do a little more work. I just did them the other day, and I haven't really taken it out since then. So it might be just fine after all this work's done. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's a 20-year-old truck, and I just got to decide what level of discomfort or not niceness am I okay with.
Now, that's not something that you have to, when you're bleeding the brakes, you have to cycle something with the computer to...
It didn't seem like it. I mean, it seemed to bleed just fine.
Because I like even on my Suburbans and Yukons, I think that if you get into it, maybe it's just the rears, but you need to cycle the ABS module, or you go through some bleed procedure, with the computer to get them to get all the air out correctly.
Well, that I will research after the show, because it might be. But on the forums when I was asking, it didn't seem like it. But you never know. It could be something I'm missing too, because it does have ABS. But it's like, that is a good question. I'll have to look at that. But yeah, overall it's going well. It's fun to take, like, when we need to go get something in town, like after work or something. Cam likes it. It's cool. The whole rear window coming down electrically.
That's pretty neat.
The whole thing comes down. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
And I was really scared to open the sunroof, because I was like, man, if this doesn't work or doesn't go back, or if it leaks, I'm like screwed, because I don't park this one in the garage, right? So I was like, ugh. But like it's starting to cool down a little bit, and I opened that back window and I opened the sunroof. It is a nice feeling. It is a different mentality, cruising, 35 miles an hour, so it's cool. But, it's just something I got to get used to.
Boy, what a beater, man.
Oh, the other thing I didn't tell you is, I don't know if I told you that the keys that they gave me 2 keys with the car, right?
Yeah.
And they worked in the ignition just fine. The tailgate didn't work at all. Like, it was jammed up. I can't figure out the tailgate. I even took the cylinder out, tried to clean it all out. I think we talked about that before. But on the doors, the two front doors have, keyholes in them.
Yeah.
The driver's door, it would like unlock, but it wouldn't relock. Huh. And the passenger door, it wouldn't work at all. Like, it wouldn't turn. So I was like, oh man, and then Toyota sells a whole rekey kit where they'll sell you every cylinder in the car. You can just rekey the whole thing at once. And I'm like, oh, I'll do that. But it was like $300. And on the forum, they're like, before you do that and spend the money, you can go get a new key cut from your VIN number.
Yeah.
So I went to the dealership and I gave them the VIN, and they cut me a new key, and lo and behold, the front doors work now with just the key. Wow. So it must have been just enough worn on those old keys that they didn't. And so the doors work. Tailgate still doesn't work. So I think I'm going to talk to a locksmith about just pinning the key or the cylinder to work with my key. Just put new pieces in it.
Well, when do you ever lock a tailgate?
What's that?
You don't ever lock a tailgate. Who locks a tailgate?
Well, I want to put a deck system in it at some point.
Oh, yeah.
Or a tonneau cover. Probably both actually. But so one of those. But then I think I embarrassed Ashley really bad so as soon as I got the key made, we went to Fred Meyer, and I was like, I need to get a key made of this right away before it wears out, so I have a duplicate.
Yeah.
Well, in the vestibule of the store, they had one of those key scanning machines to make you a key, and they wanted like $35 to make one key. And I'm like, I paid that at the dealer, which I thought was crazy for this key. And they didn't even need the key. They made it from a freaking VIN number. But okay, so I was like, well, I know they may have a key, like a regular, key cutting machine, like a regular hardware store back in hardware. So we went back to hardware, and there's like nobody but to be found, because this is like, Fred Meyer's like a grocery store basically. So I was like, well, I know how these things work. So And the machine was unattended. So,
it's really their fault.
It's their fault for leaving it on. And it was powered on, too. Like, the switch was still on. And so I just flipped her over. Boop, boop. Yep, there's the cartridge. Boop, boop. Put the keys in, boop, boop, and as soon as you hear the, she just walked away. Like, she's like, if you get in trouble, I don't want to be here. And so nobody came. And then as I'm doing it, I'm showing Cam how it works and everything, and doing the deburring on it and everything. And as I'm walking up at the register, I was like, I hope they don't have to write a slip up for these or anything. Cause the key itself has a little barcode in the back.
Right.
I'm like, I hope that's good enough. And we went through checkout and it scanned just fine. And we paid, it was $2.
Yeah.
It's like, why do they charge $35 at the front of the store and $2 in the back of the store? And this one's self-service.
Right. That's funny. All right. Well, we'll get into my vehicle drama. So I don't think I can ever remember having a tire blow out on something I've owned or been driving. And
really,
lo and behold, I've had 2 blowouts in the last 2 days.
Oh man, when I was poor, I had a bunch of blowouts.
Well, and I drove something that should have blown out tonight and didn't, luckily. So the first one is really my fault. First point here is everyone needs to sit down if you're standing up, maybe pull off the side of the road, because I've decided to sell some vehicles.
Wow. Yeah, I saw it on Facebook, and I thought somebody had, a Russian bot had impersonated his accountant somehow.
Yeah, so I did put a few on, I think I put 4 on Facebook, but I'm actually, I had to go into my county courthouse and get some seller's permits. They're like a temporary tag for the person that buys it, and they're free to get. But I had 8 titled things that I'm selling at this auction.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. I got to the point where I realized I'm not going to do a lot of these projects I thought I was going to do, and I'm not going to drive these vehicles, or I haven't been driving these vehicles like I thought I would be driving them, or, it just didn't turn out how I envisioned it. And then the other point here is too, like the CRV, I built that out with big tires, put the lift on it, did the Gambler 500 run in it, and did all that. And, it's kind of, I did what I wanted to with it. I realized it's got some severe limitations when you put tires on that big. I mean,
100 horsepower?
Yeah. The gearing is just, it's not great at all whatsoever. And so, and besides that, I was kind of over it, the whole CRV thing at that point too. And I was going to deconstruct it and make it like a kid's vehicle and stuff, but it seems like the CRVs are going for pretty good money right now. So I did take the big tires off of it. I took the decals off of it, and maybe did a little bit of Craigslist rebuilding in the wheel wells and stuff. And
what kind of decals did you have on it?
Oh, I had it
redneck or something.
No, I had it decaled up with the Firearms Radio Network, Gun Guy Radio.
For the Gambler.
For the Gambler, Patriot Patch Company. Okay.
Gotcha.
The different shows we sponsor on the network. Like Air 15 podcast, and then my buddy of mine that went with me, he has his own company. I had that on there, and yeah, we had stuff like that. And then the dashboard was covered with adhesive Velcro, and we had all these patches all over the dashboard, and that was a pain. That was a pain getting that off. If you want good adhesive Velcro, get the 2-inch or 4-inch Velcro brand. You have to order it online. But the actual Velcro brand, it's amazing adhesive properties. I mean, it's just, awesome. And I peeled those off, and then I put them on my toolboxes up here in the shop. So they stuck to, they haven't fallen off the toolboxes, so I was able to take them off, but they left so much sticky behind. It took me hours to get that dashboard not sticky.
Oof. Usually you see Goof Off or something?
Yeah, I use a whole bottle of Goof Off, a big bottle too, the biggest bottle they make. And so yeah, I've been spending time getting these vehicles ready to go to this auction. I did put some on Facebook. A while back, I decided that Facebook is just so much nonsense when you're trying to buy or sell something, especially if you're trying to sell something. Facebook is just, it's like the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
It's really
is this
bad.
Still available? Yeah.
Oh, I've got dozens of those. Yeah. I've gotten those in Spanish too. It's not. Yeah. But I figured, I'll put crazy prices on some of this stuff on Facebook, and then I'm still going to put them in the auction if they don't sell, and I get what I get at the auction. It is what it is. I've been this auction place. I've been watching the last 2-3 auctions this year and seeing what similar stuff goes for, and I've been pretty happy with seeing the prices that they've been getting for similar things, and it is what it is. But anyways, back to the tire blowouts. So I got 3 of the vehicles ready. Like pretty much no problem. I pulled them out of the weeds and, actually been keeping it really trimmed up and nice looking where I got all the cars stored this year. It's not like all really overgrown. And then I'm thinking, well, I got these other 2. I got the Ford Festiva and this F-350. I'm like, they should fire right up, be ready to drive to the auction lot. And so I get to the Festiva and I go to put the battery in, and the battery tray is like disintegrated. And it's not even metal. It's like they made these, Kia made these for Ford, but they made these battery trays out of fiberglass, and they're just like rotten to nothing. And so, I was able to rip out the remaining pieces, and I got my dad's old, Silverado, LS pickup truck. I ended up just unscrewing the metal battery tray out of it, was able to use 1 bolt hole, and then I self-tapped like 3 more
Oh, those will hold.
bolt holes. And but it's got a metal battery tray, and it's got a nice bungee cord tie down and hold down and everything. So I got the battery handled on the Festiva, but then I go to drive it, and the back tire is, the back brake is locked up. It's just not turning. So I'm like, well, I had to take the mail up to the mailbox anyways. I'll just drive up, our driveway's a half mile long. I'll just drive up and drive back, and, break itself free. No problem. And so I do that. I get back. I'm like, it still doesn't sound right. So I pull up to the shop and get out, realized it's just been locked up the whole time, and it wore a hole all the way through, the steel, tread and everything, and ripped a hole in the tire. It was a perfectly good tire. So it's really my fault that I blew that tire out by trying to break the brake free by driving it. So I guess that doesn't always work.
Did you have a spare tire for that?
Well, it's not a full-size spare. So I went online and searched for the cheapest tire for a Ford Festiva, and there were these little 12-inch tires.
It's a spare for a different car than...
Right. There are these little 12-inch tires, and I was able to find one for like $42 or something shipped. So I'll have to get that mounted, but I did take the rim off, and I beat it with a hammer and got that turning without much problem at all. I'm surprised it didn't actually break free when I drove it. I
didn't realize Kia made those for, I owned one of those for a time. It was, one of our high school, classmates' old car, and I bought it from him. Yeah, that was a piece of crap.
No, they're not too bad. For what they are, they're kind of cool. This one's really rusty. Like it lost a lot of body weight. It's sitting here. I bought it a couple of years ago at this point, and I just, I thought it'd be a cool go-kart or cool kid's car maybe, but we just never ended up using it. And the parking brake was never worked on it, and a few other things don't work on it. And I just realized I don't have the desire to fix this and drive it, so it's going. So I'll put the tire on that and I'll drive it down, 20 plus miles to the auction lot. And
is it a manual, I assume?
It's a manual, yeah. And it's a little like 1.6 liter 4-cylinder engine.
You can't put that in the back of the bed of the F-350 and then drive both at the same time.
They're really wide, though, the Festivas. For what they are, they're a wide little car. I don't think it would fit in the bed. So, yeah, and then I'll get back to the F-350, but the other blowout, I bought that parts boat just to take the motor off of it for my good boat, remember that? And
yeah.
So I finally, just today, I got the title I got the trailer title a couple days ago, and just today I got the boat title back from the state. And so I was taking that down to the auction yard, and it had really good looking tires on it too. And one just blew out on me about halfway down. So I had to call Jenny, and she had to put the jack and tools and everything in my truck and drive down and rescue me.
I'm sure she loved that.
Yeah.
Jacks are heavy to pick up too. I'm surprised she was able to do that.
I had that Harbor Freight aluminum racing jack. So,
yeah.
Okay. Because my other jacks are all really heavy. So yeah, I was glad I had bought that just, for this scenario, actually. It is a little bit of a lightweight jack for lifting heavier trucks. Like a 1-ton truck, it really doesn't work. Or even a 3/4 ton. It's not that good. So yeah, I drove the Chevy Love down tonight. Well, one of them. I'm keeping the other one, but the 2-wheel drive one, I drove it down, and it's got such bad weather check tires, just rotted. But it made it all the way down. I'm like, if I blow this out, I'm really in trouble because I have nothing that's a spare for this. Because the other Love is a different bolt pattern because it's 4-wheel drive or different lug, amount of lugs even. And I just didn't have anything else that I would fit it that I knew of. But luckily I made it down there, and I'm selling it. I had 4 brand new tires for that thing too, and I never got them mounted. I've had the tires for 2 years, so I threw them in the bed. Whoever buys it is going to get, brand new tires with it too. But it's a cool little truck. It's fun, but like it needs shocks. It needs the brakes redone. It needs, the clutch adjusted, maybe the clutch redone. Like the turn signals don't work. It's, some of these vehicles you just get in, even though they're a cool little truck and cool little vehicle, there's just so many nitty gritty little things that, if it's not, just the best thing in the world to you, you're probably never going to fix all those little things. And it kind of got to that point with me, so it's got to go.
It's like my Tundra.
Well, yeah, but you've got like a super nice vehicle, and you're like, "Oh, my door won't stay open." I'm like, this thing. I can't even imagine you driving this thing. You'd rather walk than drive this thing, I think.
So what happens if they're at the auction lot and then you get a bite on Facebook? He's going to go meet him at the auction lot and tell him to meet you there?
So I'm going to just say, actually, I put this on auction and give them the link to the auction. If they want to bid, they can bid at that point. Like I had some kid that was going to drive 3 hours, to look at something tomorrow, and like he didn't touch base with me today. So I'm like, well, I'm driving to the lot tomorrow because you got all these people on Facebook. They're like, oh yeah, it's real, these young people, even old people. I mean, just Facebook is just awful for selling vehicles, especially.
Well, I can imagine at the price point you're probably selling these too, you're getting a different clientele.
Well, that's part of the problem. That's why I put kind of crazy prices on the ones I did put up to hopefully, sift through some of that nonsense. But yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of taking it to an auction. You don't have to deal with it. After you drop it at the yard, you're done. You drop it at the yard, you turn in your title, whatever paperwork they want. And you don't have to deal with the buyer. You don't have to deal with loading or trailering or whatever. It's just like, completely out of your hands, which is pretty cool.
So how does it work? Do you put a reserve on them, or you just no reserve it, or how does that work?
No, I'm doing no reserve on all this because I've seen they've had a lot of junk, not a lot, but they've had a fair amount of junkier vehicles go through. Like last auction had an F-250 that had, coolant in the oil and didn't have a bed on it and everything. And it still sold for like $750 or $850 or something. So I'm like really all my stuff is better than that. So, and
how often are they doing these auctions? Is this like a weekly auction?
No, they do it like once a month or so during the nicer seasons. So, and there's a lot of farm stuff in it too. And yeah, just a bunch of random stuff. So putting that boat, well, the boat's already in it. The Love's already down there. Then I'm taking, 97, F-250 with the 460 big block. That is actually a pretty good truck. I just never ended up driving it at all. And then
when you said F-250, I was worried that you were getting rid of your Power Stroke one, but it's not that one then.
Yeah, it's actually just like my Power Stroke one, but it's got the 460, which isn't real desirable because of the gas mileage.
Mm-hmm.
But it runs really good. It's a great running 460. It's only got like 150,000 miles on it. I always thought I'd do something with it, just didn't. And I don't know. I think I want to get a little more intentional in my future projects. And like some of them, I really am going to have to wait till I get a lift because it's just going to take the amount of stuff I have to do to some of these future projects I want to do, it's going to have to be done with a lift. So I've come to the realization that, I'm canceling stuff that I never got to, and maybe we'll never do. And then I'm going to push other stuff off to the future till I have a better shop situation.
It's almost like your midlife crisis.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lift would make it much more motivating to work on stuff too. For me, it would at least.
Yeah, for sure. And like just having inside storage, like you and me, we were looking at goofy minivans from the 90s and stuff that were actually in really good shape, really great cars.
Pristine, crazy.
And cheap. And like they'd be fun just to bop around in, whatever, be a kid car. But like the lack of inside storage I have is another factor here. Like I've got that 82 Tornado, which is an awesome car. It really is, inside and out. It's in good shape. And it's a shame it's sitting out in the grass because I got no place to put it. And I've seen other things, like I've seen some Corvettes, I've seen some Camaros, some Firebirds, that all really good looking cars for the years, like not rusty, good paint patina, just good cars and not that much, $4,000, $5,000, cool, late 80s, early 90s muscle cars. And it's just hard for me to, acquire something else like that and not have a place to put it inside. I've got to get to a different point where I can at least store stuff better. 'Cause it's just, it's really bad for it to just sit outside in the grass. And like the Festiva really did let go, just 2 years being out here in the grass. And then that F350, the other one I mentioned, I thought would be easy to get going. Well, that's a 5-speed stick, crew cab, old body style Ford, pretty darn good shape. Like underneath it was a roofing company's truck, so they never drove it in the salt. So it's nice underneath. It's clean. But I get in that thing to move it, and the clutch sticks to the floor, won't come back up, and it won't start with the key either. I can start it with a wrench, jumping the solenoid on the fender, but it won't start with the key. And then like simple Googling that, it's like, oh, it's your switch in the column, blah, blah, blah. And you got to completely destroy your column to get that replaced. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, this is like $1,000 truck. I just, I'm not going to spend, I'm hoping I can get the clutch free. Maybe I'm hoping it's like a mouse house situation and it's rusted. I can at least get that free if I got to still jump it with a screwdriver, whatever. But,
do these people get to drive these vehicles, or they just get to inspect on site?
Last auction, so at some point I want to do a school bus RV conversion. And last auction, they had a pretty good school bus down there, and I called about that. And he said I could come down and drive it. Set up an appointment with him, and I could drive it. And
that's cool.
And
it's bad for you, for your cars being sold, but it's good for you buying one.
So yeah, I think if you can work it out with the guy, you can drive stuff, which is cool. And that school bus had the 7.3 Power Stroke, same as my truck, and it was a stick shift too. It had I forget what kind of stick it had. But it was a super cool setup, not that many stick shift school buses anymore, and rock solid reliable. Like you could probably get, easy 500,000 miles out of that thing, with that drivetrain. But it just turned out not really a good time for me to be buying anything. Partly why I'm selling stuff, need the money. And hopefully another one comes up, or maybe I can find one with some of the school buses had the 5.9 Cummins 12 valve in them too. So that would be like actually the best engine in my mind to get in a school bus. And then I looked a little more into the RV conversions and stuff and doing that in South Dakota. It seems super easy. Like you can get it converted, title and, everything into an RV. Not a lot of hoops you got to jump through or anything, so that's good too.
I think the only hurdle that I've read secondhand, I don't have any firsthand experience, but like if you're trying to go to RV parks, I think they're a little more strict on like non-factory RVs or not a newer RV, so it might be tougher to get like commercial parks. But if you're not going to commercial parks, it might be a non-issue.
Yeah, I wondered about that. Yeah, so selling stuff and also been working on this golf cart. Got it from my buddy. It was in the weeds, and I traded him some conduit for it and this old Harley Davidson golf cart. And I have an older one that's a 3-wheel, but this is a 4-wheel, and it's got built-in cup holders. You know it's good.
2 Harleys must be a midlife crisis.
Yeah, I know. I got my Harleys, but like I've been through this thing, like every wire, every mechanical part, and like the thing I've replaced, everything basically, and the thing will run good in reverse, but it won't run good forward or even at all. And so what I've finally determined after, replacing the points and just everything to do with the ignition side of things, everything to do with wires for the power and grounds and just all of that, and then making sure it was timed exactly like the factory timed it, or exactly like I've seen other people on YouTube switch the timing if they're having issues. Like, I finally came to the conclusion that, and I finally found some people saying this online, like some of this older stuff, like there's just not info on it, like on YouTube or on forums. Forums are dead anyways. And it's just a clapped out engine is why it won't go forward. Like, for whatever reason, like these engines rotate either way, and probably because it drove so much of its life in the forward orientation that the rings and everything wore out more that way than running the other orientation, apparently.
Wait a minute. So it doesn't have a transmission that changes the direction? It actually rotates differently?
Yeah.
You go forward and reverse?
Yeah. So
weird.
all the old gas powered golf carts are like this. Yeah. It's the generator starter that will rotate it one way or the other because it has to completely shut off, and then it starts up the other direction.
So you just take the pistons out and rotate them 180 degrees from each other.
Well, it's just one piston.
Oh, well, there you go. It's even easier. Take it out, flip it over, and put it back in.
There's no flipping it over. That's not how it works.
Undo the connecting rod, rotate it.
Well, yeah, I see what you're saying. I think it's the rings too. Anyways, so they sell brand new pistons and rings, so I'm just replacing the piston and rings, and I got a dingle ball hone that I'm going to hone it out, and we'll see how that goes. And if that still doesn't work, I can actually buy a brand new cylinder head that the piston rides in too. So at that point, it'd be like a brand new motor, really. So, because I did brand new Chinese carburetor even, and I took off the Harley, or I don't know what brand it is, but I took off the carburetor that was on there that was factory, and took it apart, and it actually looked good. And I got a rebuild kit for that, so I can rebuild that if I need to. But yeah, I've just been through every part of this. The good thing here is that I know how to do points ignition now. So like the other Chevy Love I got, I'll be able to, time it and do the points or do anything I need with points ignition. Really on any vehicle, I should be able to.
Makes the same concept across the board, right?
Right. So, and it also showed me that like so many things can be horribly wrong on an engine or vehicle this old, and it can still run. Like if that cylinder wasn't, worn out, like I replaced so many things on this that were just so horribly bad that you're like, how is this still running? Like even the points, and then the coil was leaking like all the oil out of it. And the wires were just awful. Like so many wires or connections were just corroded and just terribly, terribly bad. And like so many things, cause each time I replace something, I'm like, oh, this has got to be it. This is so bad, But it turns out, no, that wasn't it. But it really opened my eyes to, wow, some of this old stuff, man, it just works. Like even if it's really bad, even if it's been sitting for decades, it just works. So it's kind of got me in the groove to, get that other Chevy Love going, make it like a cool UTV thing or something, and maybe get like a small black Chevy, like a C10 from the 60s or something. Because they just work. Yeah.
Have you taken the cylinder head off that engine yet?
No, I actually watched a video of a guy taking it all the way down because the bottom of the block is a 2-piece design, so you got to split it apart. And then there's bearings in there that you do and all of that. And I don't have to do any of that, but I watched a guy do that through the top. And just doing the top I'm doing is super simple.
I'd just be curious if there's a ridge or anything, or if you have to bore it out at all, or like, cause are you going to order the piston before you take the head off? Cause like,
no, I already got the piston. There's only one piston. They don't sell an oversized.
Oh, okay.
So if it's too clapped out for what I got, I'll have to just replace the whole cylinder head, which will give me new dimensions for it.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, well, and so the cylinder head is pretty much the bore that the cylinder runs on this setup. So it's not just like, if you're thinking like
like a car.
Like a car engine, most car engines, the cylinder head isn't where the cylinder is riding, but for this, it's where the spark plug is and the whole cylinder journal or whatever you call it.
Yeah, the bore for the cylinder.
The bore, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah, that's what I was asking, because I was like, if you have to bore that all out.
Yeah, the whole piston and bore is in this top part, and the bottom part only contains the crankshaft.
Interesting. Okay, I'd be curious to see how that all works. That's good that you can still get parts for it, even. And then what are you going to do with 2 golf carts?
Well, I mean, one will be a backup, right? Well, part of the reason I want to get this one going, and I put so much time and parts into it, is that it is a better unit than the 3-wheel one. Sorry, I got a tickle in my throat. And one big factor is that the fuel tank on the 3-wheel one, you have to lift the whole body up to fill that fuel tank. So that means if you have anything in the cart, which I always do, because I use it as my toolbox basically, you got to take everything out of it to fill the fuel tank. So in this little bit newer 4-wheel version, it's got just a flap door where you can access the gas tank in the back of it.
And there's no retrofitting, like cutting a hole or a flap to get.
Yeah, so the other 3-wheel one, it needs a lot of work too. It needs the engine rebuilt. But if I go through all that work, I'm going to just cut a hole in the fiberglass body where I can fill it, without lifting the body. Because that was such a silly design. It was only the very first few years of those Harley carts that they had that. They quickly realized that they had to do something about that. Well, and the fuel tank was a big hurdle too on this, because the stock fuel tank is plastic and they don't make repops of it, and you can't find used ones either. Finding something that goes in that area, because it's behind the rear axle, it's under the tub of the cart. It's hard because it's like an odd dimension. My first thought was that, well, if you go on Amazon, you can buy all these different gas tanks that go on top of generators, and they're pretty cheap and everything. And I ordered one that I thought it would work from the dimensions listed, but it just wouldn't. It wasn't going to work. I had to return it. So I ended up finding these cheap aluminum cylinder gas tanks that you see on like hot rod, little drag cars or something, or real hot, or, rat rods or stuff. And like, it was like $100 for this aluminum, like 6-gallon tank, something like that. Even though the stock tank would have held like 10 or 11 gallons, I think, something like that. But it was the only thing I could figure out. But it came with the mounting brackets, and it mounted just perfectly in there, kind of on the rails that were already in there. And then I could kind of rotate it where I could still unscrew. It's got traditional gas cap, metal gas cap on it, where I could still access it from that gas door in the back and still fill it like a stock tank. So it doesn't hold quite as much, but it was a pretty good, solid solution. Because like the generator solution I probably wouldn't have been able to fill it from the gas door hole, and it would have been in there kind of weird anyways. But like, this is bolted in. It seems, like it almost should be there, even though it shouldn't. But so there are and there aren't a lot of parts for these. Like, it is surprising you can get new cylinders, new heads for them and stuff. But and you can get generators for them, starter generators. It's the same unit. You can get those for it, but I got one. I had 2 I returned from Amazon. And the problem with those is that they have all the right functionality and the right ports, because there's a bunch of wires going into this thing because of the way it reverses the engine and everything. But one of the studs for the wires blocks you from putting the stock air cleaner back on. So if you're going to run that, you're going to have to modify or run a different air cleaner or something.
Yeah, I could see that being an issue. So it must have some interchangeability with the mounting of some other golf cart engine or something, but it's just different enough in that regard.
Right. Well, I think it's a newer ones, the Columbia, Yamaha, newer golf carts, because they've used the same like one-cylinder motor technology all the way from the early 60s all the way, well into the 90s. It's pretty amazing they use the same setup for all these years in all these different golf carts.
Yeah, I was thinking like, well, why can't you just like replace it with a Harbor Freight like Predator motor, but that won't do the reverse for you though that way.
Yeah, I think some people have. It's got a traditional rear axle, so it's got a solid, rear axle like a car or like a truck would. So if you can interface with that axle somehow, you could replace the power plant. I think there might be videos of people doing that, but it's not like a super, just like a go-kart where you can just swap one in.
But probably not the greatest engine for that instant on and off too, because don't they just turn on and off with the pedal?
That's kind of the beauty of keeping it stock, right? Because you just hop in it, press the pedal, and it goes. And like this one, I got it so it would do it in reverse, but not forward. And that it doesn't work. So I got to go the distance here and actually get it so it can do that. The beauty of the simplicity of it, where you can just hop in it and just shoot, across the property to get what you need, your chore runner, for me, it's going to be all my projects around all these different buildings running back and forth so I can get stuff done where I'm not walking or, sure, I got the pickup truck, but, you got to climb in that, climb out of it. Mm-hmm. And really that takes a lot of time. If you got to do that, 5 times an hour because you're doing something that needs a lot of different weird parts or pieces and
it doesn't get in the tight spaces like a golf cart either.
Well, that's it too. You can weave around and just shoot through any part of the property with a little golf cart. So, I don't think of myself as a small engine guy, but like this is by far the farthest I've ever dove into like the small engine world. And, I've kind of enjoyed it. It's been a lot of hours in it and kind of frustrating that, you replace all these things and think that's it. That's going to be it. For me, it was really hard to actually figure out is all the way clapped out. Like, looking back at it, like what I could have done differently, should I have just tore the engine all the way apart? Would that have changed how I approach this whole thing? Or
I don't know. That's tough. I mean, it's easy to go back and say that, but, how would you know? I mean, why would you automatically assume especially if it ran in reverse?
Right.
If it runs in reverse but not forward, you got to think it's got to be something weird.
Well, and I
go right to ignition, but
and I kept coming down to ignition timing. It was if it's not timed correctly, then it might run in one direction properly and not the other. Finally figured out it's the motor being clapped out because I can change the timing quite drastically and reverse almost always works. So there's a pretty large range, I realize, that you can adjust the points, the point gap, and even the timing of the cylinder firing. You can, advanced or retarded. You can go quite a ways on these things, and they were still fire and run pretty well, actually. So I finally realized, well, it's definitely not an ignition thing. It's definitely, something going on with the motor being clapped out, because also it got to the point where I could run it forward and reverse. Forward would be so reverse would run without a choke. Forward, you'd have to run the choke a little bit, and then it wouldn't go fast like it should, but reverse would. And then if you ran it for like longer than 5 minutes, like running around the yard, it would, and you stopped it, you could not get it restarted in either direction, forward or reverse. You could not get it restarted because it was flooded out. It was completely flooded out, running that choke a little bit the whole time to go forward. And so I finally figured out, well, that's the issue. It's the, not having enough compression, especially after things heat up and shrink. That really opened my eyes that, well, it's really a compression issue and then compounded with the flooding issue of it having to run rich all the time.
I mean, you should be able to test that compression. I mean, you can buy a compression kit and pump it up in the reverse and then pump it up in the forward and see if you get a different number.
Yeah.
You get a little late now. You've already got the piston on here, so it's
that's true.
At this point, but
I didn't think of that. Yeah, you could do that. Well, and the other thing is part of the problem is like I don't really have tool. I don't have that tool. I don't have. I've never really
Harbor Freight. How far is the Harbor Freight from you?
Hour and a half.
Ooh, that's too far.
Yeah,
$6.99 shipping for Harbor Freight.
I know. Anyway, so it's kind of been fun. And one last thing on the golf cart, the 2 tires on it were completely toast when I got it. And so I started looking around for tires on these things, and I realized that I could get 4 tires with brand new painted rims mounted, shipped to me for less than buying 2 new tires and taking them to a shop here locally and having them mounted.
Huh. Because of the labor difference?
Well, because buying just 2 of the tires, was more, if you bought these 4 tires mounted and divided it by 4, it was $200 for the set, mounted, ready to bolt on. I'd be at $180 doing 2, but I got all 4 of them brand new for $200.
Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, so I was like, well, why not do that? And then they all
keep
match.
Your other tires for spares if you need them.
Right, I got all those to do whatever with. I mean, that's kind of the problem. You get into these smaller tires, and sure, the tires are pretty cheap, but it costs $25. Some places charge now $40 to mount a tire.
Jesus.
So, I mean, it depends what you have available to you locally. Like the place I used to take stuff, when I first moved here, they only charged $15, and now they charge, I think, $35 or $40. So I had to find a new place that I think they might actually only charge $20 a tire, but still, that's pretty unheard of anymore. Most places charge way more than that.
I think I'd be buying a set of tire spoons for those little tires like that. And
they're such a pain in the ass. They are ungodly terrible. They're bad. And I did buy a pair, and I took, because my 4-wheeler needed tires, and I took one off, and after I took it off, I'm like, screw this. I'm not putting them on. I'm not doing the other one. I'm taking it on. It's a bear to do those little tires. Anyways, we're going along again, so let's wrap this up. Patriot Patch Company makes this episode possible. And check out Patch of the Month Club. You get a unique patch and sticker and artwork cards sent to your mailbox every month. Also have awesome things for your man cave. We have cool 10 signs for your gun room wall, patriotpatch.co. Also really cool cleaning mats for your AR-15s, AKs, 1911s. Have all kinds of cleaning mats, patriotpatch.co. And if you need website design, graphic design, go check out Hunter Design, Ryan Cross. He can set you up with any of that. You can reach us at gunduyradio@gmail for feedback. Don't forget to check out all the other awesome shows here on the Firearms Radio Network. Oh, that's a wrap, Zach. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you next time.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.